What if I told you that the goal of an abuser is not just to control you, but also to bring you into their world so that they can attempt to not feel as lonely as they are? Abusers also live in a constant state of loneliness. This is why even while they're with you, they still feel lonely, because in their mind, they can't even conceive or fathom the thought of thinking kindness towards another person. Misery loves company, and this is the moral code that abusers live by every single day. They cannot communicate without manipulating, and I do not believe that this is unique to my abuser only. The thoughts of an abuser are constantly violent, vile, evil, and jealous, shameful, guilty, all the things. They are very aware that the thoughts that they think are heinous, vile, and evil. And that makes them feel lonely, because when they socialize with other people, they recognize that nobody else thinks the way they do, according to them. There are plenty of people on this planet that think the way they do. Clear. How do I know this? I lived 9 years with my abuser under a marital contract. And what I did throughout the entire 9 years was constantly research to figure out what in the world was wrong with him, because I knew that how he behaved was not normal. And a lot of my opinions come from observation. Of course, I learned a whole lot of knowledge about, sociology, psychology, all this kind of stuff, book knowledge. But the main things that I understand comes from observing him and allowing him to have that judgment-free space to just talk and to enjoy the sound of his own. One of the things that he would frequently say to me throughout our entire 9 years of living together is that I just wish I could take my brain and put it inside of other people's brain so they can understand the chaos and how I think and why I think the way that I do and what's going on. I just wish people can just be inside of my brain and just know. He wants people to live inside of his world, and that world is a very, very dark place. And I do not believe that is unique to my abuser and my abuse. One thing that you would notice about abuse and the victims is that they are not just breaking down their victim for the sake of breaking them down. They are breaking down their victim for the sake of having somebody to live in their world as their attempt to no longer feel lonely. Of course, their attempts are futile. So you will begin to see the victim become more and more and more like their. For example, my abuser did not enjoy music. Like he really didn't listen to music at all. And I'm just like, well, that's kind of weird. Guess what? Living with him for 9 years, I began to notice eventually that I had almost stopped listening to music completely. My abuser didn't cook. He really didn't cook that much. And in my depressed stupor, I noticed that my cooking declined throughout the entire 9 years until I had almost stopped cooking completely. Dancing. I love dancing. He hates dancing and he doesn't dance. I had almost stopped dancing completely throughout the entire 9 years of being. He doesn't really have hobbies. Doesn't have things that he likes to do other than shooting guns and whittling stuff with knives, which he barely do. Guess what? I had hobbies before him, and I was doing some of my hobbies, even a little bit when we got together. Well, I had stopped my hobbies completely. I was becoming like him. Depressed, shameful, and living under a constant state of darkness. Only thing, I always got rest, so he could never sleep at night. But that wasn't my curse, so I can sleep pretty good, like a log. So. And then on top of that, an abuser works, even though they do mirror you, they work really hard not to adapt any of your habits. You notice that in actual healthy relationships, couples begin to adopt other couples' habits, even phrases that they say. My abuser never adopted anything. One time, what I'll always do is take a potty. I got kids, so I say potty. And take a potty before bed. He will always wake up in the middle of the night and have to use the restroom. Well, one day I saw that he took a potty before coming to bed. And I was like, what made you start doing that? And he said, I don't know, he just decided to start doing it. And I'm like, but you've never done that ever. And he said, yeah, I know. So then I hounded on him the next day because I was actually kind of excited that he was finally adopting, a habit from me. I felt like, we were becoming a couple, like things were probably looking up. Anyway, this fool gonna say. He said, I was embarrassed. Remember I said they live in a constant state of embarrassment. Oh, what dumb stuff! He said, well, I was embarrassed. You know, I really want to say that I got it from you, a woman. A woman. He was disgusted by the thought of adopting any habit from me. You wanna know why? Because any good idea that they can't think of, it reflects on them their inadequacies. It reminds them every single day of how dull they are and how much that they just live in a constant state of darkness and how they just can't think of nothing else but violence. So he hated the fact that he couldn't even come up with the idea of using a restroom before bed. And that disgusted him. And this is why he never listened to me. I don't know if you know this, and I don't believe this is unique to just my abusers. Abusers will not take your advice. Why? Because they hate the fact that you thought of it and they couldn't even conceive the idea. Because they're jealous. It makes them feel shameful. It makes them feel inadequate, even over the tiniest thing. So anyway, I just want to add that perspective. Abusers are breaking you down so that they can bring you down to their level, so that they can have a companion living in their world of darkness so that they can finally not feel lonely. But it doesn't work because they are always in a constant state of loneliness. And that type of person you need to run away from and stay away from. You want to give them grace? Give them grace somewhere else. Give them thoughts and prayers. You ain't got to be with somebody to have sympathy with somebody. You just don't. Anyway, food for thought.